The sound of sneakers squeaking on the polished gym floor echoed as the cheer team finished another long practice. Laughter filled the air, but not everyone was laughing. At the far corner, a quiet new girl tied her shoelaces, pretending not to notice the sideways glances from the others. Her name was Alyssa Carter, and this was her first week at Lincoln High. She had only moved to town a month ago. Everything felt new. The streets, the teachers, the faces, even the air. Her mom kept saying it was a fresh start, a good place to build new memories while her dad was away serving his country. Alyssa wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe this would be the year she could finally feel like she belonged somewhere. But belonging didn't come easy here. When she first walked into the cheer tryouts, every eye had turned to her. Some girls whispered, others smiled politely, but she could tell from their looks that she was being judged before she even opened her mouth. She stood tall, introduced herself, and when it was her turn to perform, she gave everything she had. Years of training, discipline, and practice showed in every move. When the final names were called, hers was at the top of the list. That's when the whispers started. At first, it was small things, quiet giggles, a missing hairbrush from her locker, an invitation that somehow never reached her. But Alyssa had learned to ignore things like that. Her father always told her, "Keep your head high. They can't throw you off balance if you stand strong." So she smiled, practiced harder, and kept to herself. Her father wasn't around much. He worked for the Navy and was often overseas. Alyssa didn't always know where he was, but she knew what kind of man he was, disciplined, calm, and fearless. Whenever she got scared or nervous, she would picture his steady eyes and the way he used to remind her that real strength came from within. That thought always made her straighten her shoulders a little more. The cheer squad at Lincoln High was known for being one of the best in the state. The girls were talented, confident, and competitive. The team captain, Brianna, had led them to 3 straight championships. She was beautiful, popular, and had a way of making everyone want to be near her. Everyone except maybe Alyssa. Brianna didn't like the new girl. Alyssa could tell from the first day. It wasn't what Brianna said, but how she said it. Compliments that felt like hidden jabs, smiles that never reached her eyes. "Nice jump," Brianna would say, for a beginner. The other girls would laugh softly, and Alyssa would pretend not to care. At lunch, Alyssa usually sat alone or with a few friendly classmates who weren't on the cheer team. She didn't talk much about her father or where she came from. People had too many questions, and she didn't want to be treated differently. Her dad's job was something she respected deeply, but she didn't want it to define her. She wanted people to see her for who she was, a hard-working girl who just wanted to cheer, study, and make friends. But the more she tried to fit in, the more distant the other girls seemed to become. They posted pictures together on social media, leaving her out of group photos even when she was standing right there. They planned outings without telling her. One day she found out about a team sleepover only after everyone was talking about it in the locker room. She just smiled, said she had other plans, and walked away before they could see how much it hurt. At home, her mom tried to keep her spirits up. "Give it time," she would say. "People warm up eventually." Her mom worked long hours at the local clinic, but always came home with a tired smile and a comforting hug. She was the kind of woman who believed that kindness could fix almost anything. Alyssa wanted to believe that too, but school was different. High school could be cruel in quiet ways adults didn't always see. As the days went by, practice became the hardest part of her day. She loved cheerleading, the rhythm, the movement, the feeling of flying through the air. But now it came with the constant weight of eyes watching her, waiting for her to mess up. One evening, as the team rehearsed their halftime routine, Brianna made a point of switching Alyssa's position without telling her. When the music started, Alyssa found herself out of sync, and the rest of the team snickered as if it was her fault. The coach barely noticed, too focused on the overall formation to see the small games being played behind the scenes. After practice, Alyssa stayed behind to go over the routine again. The gym was quiet except for the hum of the lights above her. She moved through each step, counting softly under her breath, determined to perfect every motion. She didn't notice that one of the girls had recorded her earlier mistake and sent it around in a group chat with laughing emojis. By the next morning, the clip had already made its way through half the school. She tried not to look at her phone during class, but the whispers were impossible to ignore. Someone had even left a note in her locker that said, "Maybe cheer isn't for everyone." The words stung, but she tore the note in half and threw it away. She refused to cry. She remembered her dad's voice telling her that tears were okay, but only if they helped her move forward, not backward. That afternoon, she went home and found her mom in the kitchen making dinner. The smell of garlic and onions filled the air, and for a moment it almost felt like everything was normal. Her mom asked about her day, and Alyssa smiled and said, "It was fine." But her mom could tell it wasn't. She had that look in her eyes, the same look she used to give when Alyssa scraped her knee as a kid, but pretended it didn't hurt. Later that night, Alyssa went to her room and looked at the framed photo on her nightstand. It was of her and her dad at the beach, taken the summer before he left. He was wearing his uniform pants and a plain white shirt, holding her on his shoulders as they both laughed into the wind. She missed him more than words could say. She picked up her phone and stared at the time difference, wondering if he might be awake wherever he was stationed. But she knew she couldn't call him whenever she wanted. He'd said sometimes he'd be out of contact for weeks, so she wrote him a message instead. She didn't tell him about the bullying. She just wrote that school was different, but she was working hard and doing her best. She ended the message the same way she always did. "I'll make you proud." Then she set the phone aside and went to sleep. The next morning, she woke up to a short reply. "You already do. Stay strong." Those 4 words were enough to make her feel like she could face another day. School continued and things didn't get easier, but Alyssa became more determined. She woke up early every morning to practice stretches before class. She started eating lunch in the library where it was quiet and no one stared. And even though the girls on the squad still left her out, she kept showing up to every practice on time and giving it her all. Slowly, a few of the younger cheerleaders started warming up to her. They'd ask her for help with moves or talk about homework. It wasn't much, but it was something. One Friday afternoon, the team was preparing for the big homecoming game. The stands would be packed, and the cheer routine was supposed to be their best yet. Everyone was buzzing with excitement except Alyssa. She could sense something was off. The way Brianna kept whispering to her friends and glancing her way made her uneasy. When it was time for their final practice before the game, Alyssa noticed her pom-poms were missing. She searched the locker room while the others laughed and said they hadn't seen them. Finally, one of the younger girls whispered that she saw someone toss them into the trash behind the gym. Alyssa went outside, and sure enough, there they were, dirty and tangled. She didn't say a word. She just picked them up, brushed them off as best she could, and went back inside. When she returned, Brianna smiled sweetly and said, "Everything okay?" Alyssa just nodded and said, "Yeah, everything's fine." Inside, her heart was pounding, but she refused to give them the reaction they wanted. She used the old ruined pom-poms during practice and still hit every move perfectly. The coach praised her form without noticing the quiet tension between the girls. That night, when Alyssa got home, her mom was waiting with pizza and a movie. They laughed and talked for a while, and for the first time all week, Alyssa felt a little lighter. As she was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a picture of her at practice earlier, holding the dirty pom-poms with the caption, "Trash fits trash." Her stomach dropped. She turned off her phone, crawled under her blanket, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since moving to Lincoln High, she wondered if maybe she didn't belong here after all. But then she remembered her dad's words. "Strength isn't about what they say, it's about what you decide to believe." She repeated it quietly to herself until she fell asleep. The next morning, she woke up early and went for a run before school. The cool air stung her cheeks, but it cleared her mind. She thought about how her dad used to wake her at dawn to jog with him, teaching her how to pace her breathing and push through when it hurt. "The body gives up before the mind does," he used to say. By the time she got home, she felt ready to face whatever came next. At school, she walked through the halls with her head held high. The whispers were still there, but she didn't flinch. When she entered the gym for practice, Brianna and her friends exchanged glances but said nothing. Alyssa smiled politely, tied her shoes, and took her spot. As the music started, she focused on every move, every beat, every breath. Her body moved with purpose and power. By the end of the routine, even Brianna couldn't find anything to criticize. The coach clapped and said, "That's the energy I want tomorrow." "Great job, everyone." Alyssa felt a small spark of pride. Maybe she couldn't change what people thought of her overnight, but she could control how she showed up. That was something her father had taught her without even being there. As practice ended and the girls filed out, Alyssa stayed behind to clean up. She looked around the empty gym, feeling both lonely and strong at the same time. She picked up her bag and walked outside, where the late afternoon sun painted the sky gold. The air smelled like cut grass and autumn leaves. For a brief moment, everything felt calm. What she didn't know was that this was just the beginning, the calm before the storm that would soon test her in ways she'd never imagined. But for now, she walked home with steady steps, thinking only of doing her best at the game tomorrow, unaware that life was about to change in ways neither she nor the Bullies could have predicted. The next few weeks at Lincoln High were harder than Alyssa expected. Every morning she told herself that things would get better, but each day seemed to bring a new challenge. The girls on the cheer team smiled at her when the coach was around, but their tone changed as soon as practice ended. It wasn't the kind of bullying people could easily see. It was quiet, calculated, and constant. At first, Alyssa tried to be friendly. She offered to help with routines, carried extra water bottles, and complimented the others after practice. But instead of kindness, she got smirks and whispered jokes. "You really love being teacher's pet, don't you?" one of them said. Another added, "She's trying too hard." They laughed together, and Alyssa forced a smile, pretending not to care. She learned to keep her head down. At lunch, she started sitting by herself or sometimes in the library. It was peaceful there. No one stared or whispered. She could eat quietly and finish her homework without hearing fake laughter in the background. The librarian, an older woman with kind eyes, began to notice her and sometimes asked how cheer was going. Alyssa would smile and say, "It's fine," even when it wasn't. Practice became both her escape and her burden. She loved cheering, loved the feeling of flying through the air, the rhythm of the routines, and the rush of applause. But now the gym felt heavy with tension. The captain, Brianna, watched her with sharp eyes, waiting for her to make a mistake. When Alyssa did something right, there was silence. When she stumbled, the laughter came quick. One day, during a tough routine, someone accidentally switched the song in the speaker right before her solo. The beat changed completely, throwing her off. She stumbled slightly, and a few girls giggled. "Guess she's not as perfect as she thinks," one said under her breath. The coach didn't hear it. He just told them to start again. Alyssa bit her lip and finished strong, refusing to give them the reaction they wanted. After practice, she stayed behind again, just like always. The gym was empty, the echo of her sneakers bouncing softly off the walls. She repeated the moves until her muscles ached. Her father's voice replayed in her mind. Discipline beats talent when talent gets lazy. It made her smile faintly. He always knew how to push her, even when he wasn't there. Her mother noticed the change in her too. "You look tired, sweetheart," she said one night as they ate dinner. "Are you sleeping enough?" Alyssa shrugged. "I'm fine, Mom, just busy." She didn't tell her about the teasing. Her mom worked long shifts and already carried enough stress. The last thing she wanted was to make her worry more. That Friday, the team was preparing for a pep rally in front of the whole school. It was a big deal. Everyone would be watching. Alyssa felt nervous but ready. She had practiced every move perfectly, determined not to give anyone a reason to laugh at her again. When she got to school early that morning, she went straight to the locker room to change, but when she opened her locker, she froze. Her uniform was missing. Her shoes were gone too. All that was left was a note taped to the inside of the door that said, "Try cheering without this." Her hands trembled. She looked around the room, but no one else was there yet. She wanted to scream, but instead she took a deep breath. She ran to the lost and found, hoping maybe someone had moved her things. Nothing. The rally was in less than an hour. Desperate, she found an old practice uniform in her gym bag and decided to wear it, even though it didn't match the others. When she walked back into the locker room, the girls were already there. They looked at her and giggled. "Oh, you're wearing that?" Brianna said with a smirk. Bold choice. Alyssa said nothing. She just tied her shoes and walked away. The pep rally went as well as it could. The crowd cheered, the music boomed, and Alyssa gave everything she had. For a few minutes, she forgot about everything else. She smiled, flipped, and landed each move perfectly. When the routine ended, the gym erupted in applause. Even the coach clapped proudly. Alyssa felt a rush of relief. Maybe things were finally turning around. But later that afternoon, her stomach dropped when she saw her phone. Someone had posted a picture of her from the rally. zoomed in on her old uniform with a caption that said, "Couldn't afford the right one?" The post had dozens of laughing emojis. She turned off her phone immediately and buried her face in her hands. It felt like no matter what she did, they found new ways to humiliate her. That night, she didn't eat much. Her mom asked what was wrong, but Alyssa just said she was tired. She went to her room, shut the door, and lay on her bed staring at the ceiling. For the first time since moving, she wondered if she should just quit the team. It would be easier. No more whispers, no more stares. Just peace. But then she thought of her father. He would never quit. He'd always told her that the hardest moments were the ones that built strength. She wiped her eyes and whispered to herself, "I'm not quitting." The next day, she went back to practice. The air was thick with unspoken tension. She could feel the stares on her, but she ignored them. When Brianna tried to make another snide comment, Alyssa simply looked her in the eye and said, "Let's just focus on the routine." For a moment, Brianna didn't know what to say. That small act of calm confidence was enough to shift the energy. The rest of the girls fell silent. From that day on, Alyssa stopped trying to fit in. She focused only on what she could control: her skill, her attitude, and her discipline. Slowly, a few of the younger cheerleaders started talking to her more. They'd ask her for tips, laugh with her during breaks, and sit beside her at lunch. It wasn't much, but it made school feel a little less lonely. One afternoon, as she practiced alone in the gym, one of the younger girls came up to her. "You're really good," she said shyly. "The others are just jealous." Alyssa smiled. "Thanks," she said softly. "Just keep working hard. That's all that matters." It was a small moment, but it meant the world to her. Still, things didn't stop completely. Notes would appear in her locker. Rumors would spread. But she handled them differently now. Instead of crying, she used that energy to train harder. Every insult pushed her to be better. Every rumor became fuel. Weeks passed, and the regional cheer competition grew closer. The whole team was nervous, especially since they were going up against last year's champions. The coach pushed them harder than ever, and for once even Brianna had to admit that Alyssa's form was nearly perfect. "Don't mess it up," she muttered one afternoon, but Alyssa only smiled and said, "I won't." At home, her mom noticed a change in her. Alyssa seemed stronger, calmer, more focused. "You've grown a lot these past few months," she said one night. Alyssa just nodded. "I had to," she replied quietly. She didn't say it out loud, but she knew she was becoming the kind of person her father would be proud of. One night she sat on her bed and looked at her phone. She decided to send her dad a message. "Hey, I've been having a tough time at school," she typed, "but I'm learning to stay strong like you taught me." A few hours later, his reply came through. "You're stronger than you think. Keep your chin up." She smiled at the screen, feeling his words like a warm hug. The next morning, she woke up before sunrise and went for a run. The streets were quiet and the cool air filled her lungs. She remembered running with her dad when she was younger. Him telling her how to pace her breathing, how to focus her mind when things got hard. "It's not the distance that beats you," he used to say. "It's the doubt." Those words echoed in her mind with every step she took. When she got to practice that afternoon, something had shifted inside her. She wasn't nervous anymore. She wasn't afraid of being judged. She just wanted to perform. When the music started, her movements were sharp and full of energy. Everyone noticed. Even Brianna had to admit it silently. Alyssa was good. Really good. After practice, the coach pulled her aside. "You've come a long way," she said. "You should be proud." Alyssa nodded, a quiet smile forming on her lips. For the first time, she truly felt it. Pride. Not for being liked, but for earning her place through hard work. That night, as she walked home under the fading light, she felt something new. A sense of peace. The whispers might not stop tomorrow. The girls might never fully accept her. But she had learned something much more important. She didn't need their approval to shine, and deep down she knew the story wasn't over. There were bigger challenges ahead, ones that would test her strength in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But she was ready. For the first time since stepping foot in that gym, she believed in herself completely. The regional cheer competition was getting closer, and the days felt longer than ever. Every afternoon, the gym was filled with the sound of sneakers hitting the floor, music blasting, and voices calling out counts. The coach pushed everyone harder than usual. Each move had to be perfect, every landing sharp and steady. Alyssa worked harder than anyone else, her focus tighter than ever. She didn't want to give anyone a reason to doubt her. But even with all her effort, she could feel something inside her growing heavier day by day. At school, she had stopped paying attention to the whispers. They still came now and then, but she didn't care anymore. The quiet comments didn't sting like before. What bothered her now was the emptiness that came after practice, the walk home in the cool evening air, when everything finally slowed down and she could feel how tired she was. That Friday, she came home late. Her mom was in the kitchen making dinner, humming softly to herself. "You look exhausted," her mom said when she saw her. Alyssa dropped her bag by the door and nodded. "We practiced for 4 hours," she said, trying to smile. Her mom walked over, touched her shoulder, and said, "You're working hard, but make sure you're taking care of yourself too." Alyssa just nodded again and sat down. That night, after dinner, she went to her room and looked at the photo of her dad that always sat on her desk. He was smiling in his Navy uniform, one hand resting on her shoulder when she was little. She missed him more than she ever said out loud. Without thinking much, she picked up her phone and sent him a message. "Hey, competition's coming soon. I wish you were here." She didn't expect a reply. Sometimes weeks went by before she heard anything, but that night, just as she was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed. The message was short, but enough to make her smile. "I'll be home sooner than you think. Keep pushing, kiddo. I'm proud of you." Her heart skipped a beat. She read it twice, then 3 times. He was coming home. The thought made her chest feel warm. For the first time in a long while, she fell asleep smiling. The next few days flew by. At practice, Alyssa's energy was different. She felt lighter, stronger. Every move came easier, and even the coach noticed. "Nice work today," the coach said one afternoon after everyone else had left. "You've improved a lot." Alyssa thanked her, quietly proud of how far she had come. One afternoon, the gym doors opened during practice, and the coach paused mid-sentence. Everyone turned their heads. A tall man in uniform stood in the doorway. The sound of his boots on the floor made a few of the girls whisper. Alyssa froze for a second, her eyes wide. Then she smiled, the biggest smile she had in months. Her father was home. She ran over and hugged him tightly. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The whispers, the cold stares, the lonely lunches, none of it mattered. Her dad hugged her back with the same steady calm he always had. "You've grown," he said softly. "You've been working hard, huh?" The coach smiled and gave them a moment alone. "We'll wrap up early today," she said, dismissing the team. The other girls left the gym quietly, though a few of them lingered, sneaking curious glances at Alyssa's father. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes were kind and sharp. Something about him carried quiet authority. When they got home, Alyssa's mom was shocked to see him standing at the door. She dropped her spoon and ran to hug him. It had been nearly a year since they'd all been together. They sat down for dinner as if no time had passed at all, talking and laughing until late. But later that night, after her parents had gone to bed, her father knocked gently on her door. "Can I come in?" he asked. She nodded, and he sat beside her on the bed. "You've been quieter than usual," he said softly. "You want to tell me what's going on?" She hesitated. For months she had kept everything bottled up, the bullying, the jokes, the pranks, but looking at him now, it all came rushing out. She told him everything. Every cruel word, every moment she felt alone. She even told him about the ruined uniform and the fake posts online. Her father listened without interrupting once. When she finished, there were tears in her eyes. He was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "You did the right thing by not fighting back. But there's another kind of strength too, the kind that comes from standing tall when others try to push you down." She looked up at him. "I tried, Dad, I really did." "I know you did," he said, resting a hand on her shoulder. "And I'm proud of that. But now it's time to remember who you are. You don't owe anyone an apology for being strong." That night, before bed, he told her something he used to say when she was little. "The world doesn't always play fair, but you can still play right. That's how you win." The next morning, he woke her up early. "Come on," he said. "We're going for a run." They jogged through the quiet streets as the sun rose. The cool air filled her lungs, and for the first time in months, she felt free. Her father kept pace beside her, silent most of the way. When they stopped, he looked at her and said, "This is where you find your strength, out here where it's just you and your breath. Nobody can take that from you." Over the next few days, he trained with her in the backyard. He didn't make her do anything extreme, just small routines, stretching, focus exercises, breathing control. But the lessons went deeper than that. When they talk behind your back, he told her, it means you're ahead of them. Don't waste energy looking back. Alyssa started to feel different. At practice, she stood taller. When Brianna made a comment, she didn't flinch. When someone rolled their eyes, she smiled politely and kept moving. It wasn't arrogance, it was peace. Her calm confidence unsettled the girls who used to mock her. One afternoon after practice, her father came to pick her up. He stood by the door, watching quietly as she finished a routine. The girls noticed him again. There was something about his presence, his straight posture, the quiet authority in his eyes, that made even the boldest of them lower their voices. When practice ended, Brianna and her friends walked out together whispering. That's her dad? One asked. He looks scary. Another replied, no wonder she's so tough. Alyssa heard them but didn't respond. She just smiled to herself. In the car, her father said, you handled that well. I didn't even say anything, she said. Exactly, he replied. Sometimes silence is louder than words. The night before the competition, Alyssa sat in her room, nervous but ready. Her father knocked on the door again. You'll do great tomorrow, he said, sitting beside her. You've already won by not giving up. She nodded and smiled. The next day, the team gathered early at the gym before heading to the arena. The atmosphere was tense, but Alyssa felt calm. Her father's words echoed in her mind as she stretched and tied her shoes. When they arrived, hundreds of people filled the stands. The music, the lights, the cheers, it all felt unreal. When it was their turn, the team took their positions. Alyssa closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and focused. The routine started perfectly. Every move flowed like water, every landing sharp and strong. When it came time for her solo flip, she soared through the air and landed flawlessly. The crowd erupted in applause. As the music ended, the girls hugged and smiled, even Brianna. For a moment, the competition and the rivalry disappeared. They were just a team again. When Alyssa looked into the stands, she saw her father standing tall, his eyes full of pride. He gave her a small salute and nodded. She smiled back, her heart full. That night when she got home, her father said softly, you see, you didn't need to fight back. You just had to show them who you are. She nodded, tears in her eyes.
Thanks, Dad, he smiled.
Always, kiddo. And for the first time in a long while, Alyssa knew deep down that everything was going to be okay. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was growing stronger. One routine, one challenge, one moment at a time. The week after the competition felt lighter for Alyssa. She walked through the hallways of the school with her head held high, not out of pride but out of peace. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was walking through shadows. People smiled at her, and a few even congratulated her on the team's win. Some of the same students who once looked through her now waved when they passed her in the hallway. It felt different, like a small piece of the weight she had been carrying had finally lifted. But even as things seemed to settle, there were still a few who hadn't changed. Brianna, the captain, didn't say much to Alyssa, but her silence wasn't friendly. It was sharp, almost cold. She smiled during practice, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Alyssa noticed it, but she refused to let it bother her. Her father's words stayed in her head every time she walked into that gym. You don't need to fight back. Just show them who you are. As the days went on, the team prepared for the state competition, the biggest one of the year. It was the event that could decide if they made it to nationals. Everyone was nervous, even the coach. They practiced harder than ever, sometimes staying late into the evening. Alyssa didn't complain. She loved the feeling of working for something, of knowing her effort mattered. Still, she could sense the tension growing again. The pressure made people short-tempered, and small mistakes led to harsh words. One day during a break, Alyssa sat alone on the bleachers, sipping water. Two of the girls were whispering behind her. She thinks she's perfect now just because she nailed that last routine, one of them said quietly. The other laughed. Yeah, wait until Brianna shows her up at state. She won't be so confident then. Alyssa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She didn't turn around or say a word. Later that night, she told her father about it. He was sitting at the kitchen table, cleaning a small model ship he had been working on since coming home. Sounds like they still don't know who they're dealing with, he said with a quiet smile. Alyssa laughed softly. They think they can get in my head. He looked up and met her eyes. Don't let them. You already proved yourself. The rest is just noise. Alyssa nodded, and something about the way he said it made her feel grounded again. She went to bed that night with her focus sharp and her mind clear. The day of the state competition arrived before she knew it. The entire team gathered early at the gym to stretch and get ready. The air was thick with nerves. Even Brianna looked tense, pacing back and forth while checking her phone. The bus ride was quiet. Everyone was too focused to talk much. Alyssa sat by the window, earphones in, staring at the passing trees. She thought about how far she had come since she first joined the team. When they arrived, the arena was packed. Music blared from the speakers as different teams performed their routines. The crowd was loud, cheering and clapping after every performance. The coach gathered the team in a circle. "This is it," she said firmly. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this. Remember, trust each other and stay in sync. You've got this." As they walked toward the stage, Alyssa caught sight of her father in the crowd. He was standing tall, hands in his pockets, eyes focused on her. She smiled slightly and he nodded once. That was all she needed. The team took their places on the mat. The music started and the first few moves went smoothly. Their timing was perfect, their energy high. Then as they began the second half of the routine, Alyssa felt someone brush against her leg. It threw her slightly off balance. She recovered quickly, but she noticed Brianna's smirk as they switched positions. Alyssa realized it wasn't an accident. For a brief moment, anger flickered in her chest, but she pushed it down. She focused on her breathing, on the rhythm of the music, on every count in her head. The rest of the routine went on flawlessly. When the final pose hit, the crowd erupted into applause. Alyssa smiled through the adrenaline. They had done it. Backstage, the team was buzzing with excitement. The coach hugged them and said, "That was amazing. You nailed it." Everyone cheered. Everyone except Brianna, who stood a few feet away, arms crossed. Alyssa didn't care. She wasn't going to let anyone steal her joy this time. When they returned to their seats to wait for the results, Alyssa spotted her father again. He gave her a thumbs up and mouthed, "Proud of you." She grinned. That was worth more than any trophy. After what felt like forever, the announcer began reading the results. In third place, cheers erupted. In second place, another team's name was called. And the state champions are Lincoln High. The team screamed, jumping and hugging one another. Alyssa's heart raced. They had done it. When the excitement died down and they were getting ready to leave, Brianna approached her. "You think you're the reason we won?" she asked quietly, her tone sharp. Alyssa blinked, surprised. "No," she said calmly. "We all worked hard." Brianna stepped closer. "Don't play innocent. You want everyone to think you're the star." Before Alyssa could reply, her father appeared nearby, talking with the coach. Brianna turned slightly, her confidence wavering as she noticed him. Alyssa didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "I'm just proud of our team. That's all." Her father walked over just as Brianna took a step back. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his tone calm but steady. Brianna nodded quickly. "Yeah, just talking about the performance." He looked at her for a second longer, then nodded once. "Good job today," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but something about it carried quiet strength. Brianna mumbled a thank you and hurried off. As they walked to the car, Alyssa glanced up at him. "You didn't have to do that," she said. He smiled faintly. "Did what?" She laughed. "You scared her." He shrugged. "Didn't mean to. I just wanted to make sure everything was fine." They both laughed, and for the first time, the tension that had followed her for months finally felt like it was gone. A few days later at school, things were different. People congratulated Alyssa in the hallways. Even some of the girls who used to avoid her came up to talk. The coach had announced that they would be going to nationals, and everyone was excited. But there was something else too, something quieter. A kind of respect. People no longer looked at her as the new girl. She was one of them now. Still, Brianna kept her distance. She wasn't cruel anymore, but the wall between them stayed. Alyssa didn't mind. She wasn't looking for friendship. She just wanted peace. One afternoon, as Alyssa was finishing practice, Brianna walked up to her. "You were good out there," she said suddenly. Alyssa looked up surprised. "Thanks," she said simply. Brianna hesitated before speaking again. "I didn't think you'd last this long when you first joined." "Guess I was wrong." Alyssa smiled gently. "I wasn't trying to prove you wrong. I was just trying to prove to myself that I belong here." Brianna nodded, her expression softening for the first time. Well, you do. Then she turned and walked away. That night, when Alyssa told her father about it, he just smiled. See, he said, sometimes the hardest battles are the quiet ones. You fought yours the right way. She nodded, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. A few days later, the team held a small celebration at the gym. Parents, friends, and teachers came to watch a short performance and enjoy snacks. The coach gave a short speech about teamwork and dedication. When she called Alyssa's name, the applause was loud. Alyssa blushed but smiled, glancing toward her father. He stood in the back, clapping proudly. After the event, as they walked home together, her father said, "You handled everything with grace. I'm proud of you, not just for winning, but for who you've become." Alyssa looked up at him. "You always say that word, grace," he smiled. "Because real strength doesn't shout. It just stands steady, and that's what you did." The sky was fading into soft shades of orange as they reached home. The sound of crickets filled the air. Alyssa felt a quiet peace settle inside her. The girl who once walked through those school doors feeling invisible was gone. She had faced whispers, mockery, loneliness, and doubt. But she had stood tall through all of it. Her journey wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about learning who she was and remembering the strength that was already in her. Her father had shown her how to find it, not by fighting, but by believing. That night she stood by her window looking out at the stars. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning. Life would throw more challenges her way. Bigger ones maybe, but now she was ready. She smiled softly, whispering the same words her father once told her. The world doesn't always play fair, but you can still play right. And from that night on, that's exactly what she did. The months that followed were some of the best Alyssa had ever known. The cheer team had finally found its rhythm, and the cold looks and whispers that once filled the gym were gone. Everyone worked together now, almost as if the hard times had pulled them closer. Alyssa had earned not only her place on the team, but also a quiet kind of respect that didn't need words to be understood. She didn't gloat or act superior. She just kept doing what she always did, showing up, working hard, and staying kind. Her father still dropped her off for practice some days. The other girls would greet him politely now, and he always smiled and wished them luck. Even Brianna, who had once been her biggest critic, had changed. She wasn't overly friendly, but she wasn't hostile anymore either. Sometimes she even asked Alyssa for help with certain moves. It wasn't quite friendship, but it was peace, and that was enough. One afternoon, after a long practice, the coach gathered everyone together. "We have one more big event before nationals," she said. "It's a community showcase next weekend. Local schools will perform to raise money for the Children's Hospital. It's not a competition, but it's a chance for us to perform for something that matters." Alyssa felt a spark of excitement. Performing for a good cause felt different. It wasn't about medals or trophies, it was about heart. The week leading up to the showcase was filled with preparation. The team practiced new stunts, cleaned up their routine, and even added a short solo section for Alyssa, something the whole group had agreed on. She had earned it, and no one argued. At home, her father helped her stretch and prepare. He had a way of motivating her without pushing too hard. "Just remember," he said one night, "it's not about impressing people. It's about giving your best every time you step out there." She nodded, taking his words to heart. The night before the showcase, the whole team gathered in the gym for a final run-through. The energy was high. The music echoed through the space, and everyone moved in sync. When they finished, the coach clapped and said, "That's it. You're ready." Everyone cheered, laughing and hugging each other. As Alyssa packed her bag, Brianna walked over. "You were amazing tonight," she said. "That solo is going to be the best part." Alyssa smiled. "Thanks. You looked great too." Brianna nodded and hesitated before saying, "You know, I used to think you were trying to show off, but I was wrong. You just love what you do." Alyssa chuckled softly. "I do. That's all I ever wanted, to just do what I love." The next day, the gymnasium was packed with families, friends, and kids from the community. Balloons and banners decorated the walls, and the air buzzed with excitement. The team waited backstage, going over last-minute details. Alyssa peeked through the curtain and spotted her parents in the crowd. Her father stood with his arm around her mom, both smiling proudly. When their turn came, Alyssa took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage with her team. The music started, and they moved as one. Every jump, every turn, every lift flowed perfectly. When it came time for Alyssa's solo, the lights dimmed slightly and all eyes turned to her. She moved gracefully across the mat, her body carrying the rhythm like it was part of her. When she landed her final move, the crowd erupted in applause. As they finished the performance, the team stood together, breathing hard but smiling wide. The coach hugged them all and said, "That was beautiful. You made me proud." After the show, people came up to congratulate them. A little girl, no more than 7, walked up to Alyssa holding a small autograph book. "You were amazing," she said shyly. "I want to be like you when I'm older." Alyssa knelt down and smiled. "You'll be even better," she said, signing the girl's book. The little girl beamed and ran back to her parents. Her father came over then, pride written all over his face. "You were incredible," he said softly. "You've come a long way." Alyssa smiled, feeling her throat tighten with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. He shook his head. "You already had it in you. I just reminded you where to look." Over the next few weeks, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. School, practice, home, it all felt balanced. Alyssa found herself smiling more, laughing more. The weight that once followed her had lifted completely. One Friday evening, the coach announced that the team would be featured in the local newspaper for their state championship win and community work. The photographer came to take pictures during practice. Everyone stood together, smiling proudly. The next day, when the article came out, Alyssa saw her photo on the front page of the local section with the caption, "Lincoln High Cheer Team brings strength and spirit to the community." She showed it to her father, who grinned. "Looks like someone's becoming famous," he teased. Alyssa laughed. "Just for a day," she said. But deep down she felt something more. It wasn't fame she cared about. It was what the picture represented. It told a story of growth, strength, and resilience. As nationals approached, the team's training intensified again, but this time it was different. There was no tension, no rivalry. They supported each other, cheered each other on, and celebrated every small victory. Alyssa had become someone others looked up to, not because she tried to be a leader, but because she led by example. Her father continued to be her quiet support at home. Some evenings they would sit on the porch together watching the sunset. "You know," he said one night, "when I look at you now, I don't see the little girl who used to doubt herself. I see someone who knows who she is." Alyssa smiled softly. "It took me a while to figure that out." He nodded. "That's okay. The best lessons take time." The day of nationals arrived bright and clear. The team traveled early in the morning, the bus filled with chatter and nervous laughter. Alyssa sat near the front, looking out the window, feeling a calm determination settle in her chest. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't even nervous. She just felt ready. The arena was huge, far bigger than any place they had performed before. As they warmed up, the coach gathered them one last time. "You've all worked so hard for this," she said. "No matter what happens out there, remember, you earned your place here." When it was their turn, they took the floor with confidence. The lights were bright and the crowd was massive, but Alyssa tuned it all out. She focused on the rhythm, on her team, on the trust they had built. The routine flowed perfectly from start to finish. Every lift, every toss, every move was in sync. When the music ended, they struck their final pose and the crowd exploded with cheers. After the performance, they waited backstage for the results. Alyssa's father was in the stands, his expression calm but proud. When the announcer finally spoke, the gym went silent. "And the national champions are Lincoln High," the team screamed, jumping up and hugging each other. Tears ran down Alyssa's face as she realized what they had accomplished. The coach handed her the trophy and said, "You deserve this moment." Alyssa held it high, the crowd cheering louder than ever. When she found her father afterward, she ran straight into his arms. "We did it," she said, still breathless. He hugged her tightly. "I knew you would." As the night went on, the team celebrated together, laughing and taking pictures. But for Alyssa, the best moment came later, when things quieted down. She and her father stood outside the arena looking up at the stars. He looked at her and said, "You see what happens when you stay true to who you are?" She nodded. "Yeah, it's not always easy though," he smiled. "No, it isn't, but it's worth it." The cool breeze brushed against her face as she looked up at the night sky. Everything she had gone through, the hurt, the doubt, the fear, it had all led to this. She had faced people who tried to break her spirit, and she had come out stronger. From that day on, Alyssa carried those lessons wherever she went. She continued cheering, but she also started mentoring younger students who struggled to fit in. She told them, "Don't let others define you. You know your worth. You just have to believe it." Her father often watched her from the sidelines, proud and quiet, knowing that his daughter had found her strength not from fighting back, but from standing tall. Years later, when people talked about Alyssa Carter, they didn't just remember her as the talented cheerleader. They remembered her as the girl who never gave up, who faced cruelty with grace, and who showed everyone that true strength comes from within. And every time she stood on a mat ready to perform, she still heard her father's voice in her heart, steady, calm, and full of pride. "The world doesn't always play fair," he had said once, "but you can always play right." Those words stayed with her forever, guiding her through every challenge, every victory, and every new beginning. And as the lights shone down on her one last time, Alyssa knew she had not only earned respect, she had earned peace. After nationals, life changed in quiet but meaningful ways for Alyssa. The school treated her and the team like local celebrities. Hallways that once felt cold and unfriendly now filled with warm smiles and supportive nods. The same students who used to whisper behind her back now congratulated her, telling her how proud they were that someone from their school had made such a mark. Alyssa never let the attention get to her head. She smiled, said thank you, and kept walking with the same calm grace that had carried her through the toughest days. The cheer coach planned a small celebration in the gym for the team. Parents, teachers, and students were invited. Streamers hung from the ceiling and a big banner read, "Congratulations, National Champions." The music played softly and laughter echoed through the gym. Alyssa's father stood near the back, talking quietly with the principal, a proud but humble smile on his face. When it was time for speeches, the coach stepped up first. She thanked everyone for their support and praised the team for their hard work. Then she turned toward Alyssa. "There's one person who has reminded us all what strength, courage, and teamwork really mean," she said. "Alyssa, you showed us that kindness can be powerful. You taught us that real leadership doesn't come from being loud. It comes from showing up and never giving up." The crowd clapped as Alyssa walked up, cheeks flushed with surprise. She took the microphone and looked out at the faces smiling back at her. "Thank you," she began softly. "When I joined this team, I just wanted to belong. I didn't know that the challenges would make me stronger. I learned that even when people doubt you, you can't doubt yourself. And I learned that sometimes the people who stand against you can become the ones who stand beside you." The applause that followed was loud and long. Alyssa looked toward her father, who nodded at her with quiet pride. After the celebration, things started to move quickly. The school district wanted to highlight the team's story on their website, and a local TV reporter reached out to do a short feature on Alyssa and her father. At first, she felt nervous about the attention, but her dad reminded her, "Sometimes sharing your story helps someone else find their strength." The interview took place at the school gym. The reporter asked about her journey, her challenges, and what kept her going. Alyssa answered honestly. "There were times I wanted to quit," she said, "but my dad always told me to stand tall and stay true. I didn't realize how strong I could be until I stopped trying to please everyone and started believing in myself." When the segment aired a week later, messages poured in. Students from other schools, parents, even strangers who had seen her story online. Many of them said her story had inspired them to stand up to their own challenges. Alyssa read every message with gratitude, amazed that something so personal could reach so many people. Life slowly returned to normal. She balanced schoolwork, cheer practice, and part-time mentoring at a local youth center. The center had asked her to help younger girls who wanted to try cheerleading, but didn't have the confidence. The first time she walked in, a group of shy faces looked up at her. "You don't have to be perfect," she told them with a smile. "You just have to start." One girl raised her hand and asked, "Were you ever scared?" Alyssa nodded. "All the time," she said. "But courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing it anyway." Over time, she saw those girls grow braver, louder, and more confident. They started believing in themselves the same way she had learned to. Watching them reminded Alyssa of her own journey, and it made her proud to give back. Meanwhile, her father had returned to his usual routines. He never boasted about his time in the Navy SEALs, and most people didn't even know about it. He liked to stay in the background, always steady, always watching. But Alyssa could see how proud he was of her. Sometimes she caught him smiling to himself when she wasn't looking, and that made her heart swell with warmth. One spring evening, they sat on the porch as the sky turned shades of gold and pink. Birds chirped in the distance, and the air smelled like freshly cut grass. "You've grown a lot this year," her father said quietly. "I'm proud of you," Alyssa smiled. "You've been saying that a lot lately," he chuckled softly. "You've been earning it a lot lately." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know, I think everything that happened, all the hard stuff, it was worth it." "I wouldn't change it," he nodded. "That's what makes you who you are. The easy days don't teach you much. The hard ones do." As summer approached, Alyssa received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from a university a few hours away. They had seen her story online and wanted to offer her a small scholarship for their cheer program. She was stunned. The thought of leaving home was both exciting and scary. She showed the letter to her father, who read it silently before looking up at her with a proud smile. "Looks like the next chapter is calling," he said. They spent the next few months preparing. They toured the campus, met the coach, and explored the dorms. The university felt big but welcoming. The coach told Alyssa that her discipline and attitude were exactly what they wanted on the team. When the time came to move, Alyssa stood in her room, surrounded by boxes and memories. Her old cheer uniform hung on the back of her chair. She picked it up and smiled, remembering every moment, the fear, the triumph, the laughter, the tears. Her father helped load the car, keeping the mood light with jokes and stories. But when they arrived at the university and unpacked the last box, there was a quiet moment between them. "I'm really going to miss you," Alyssa said softly. He smiled, his eyes gentle. "I'll miss you too, but I'll always be here when you need me." She hugged him tightly, holding on for a long time. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. He pulled back and said, "You don't have to thank me for being your dad. Just promise me one thing, keep being you." "I promise," she said. When he drove away, Alyssa watched the car disappear down the road before turning toward the campus with a deep breath. A new beginning waited ahead. College life came with its own challenges. The cheer team was competitive and everyone was talented. But Alyssa didn't let that intimidate her. She remembered what her father had taught her, to focus on effort, not on others' opinions. Slowly, she found her place. Her teammates admired her calm energy and how she always lifted others up. One afternoon, during a tough practice, a freshman girl stumbled during a stunt and looked close to tears. The coach was frustrated and the girl looked ready to give up. Alyssa walked over, smiled, and said quietly, "Take a breath. You've got this. Try again." The girl nodded, and on the next attempt she nailed the move. The whole team cheered, and Alyssa saw a spark of pride on the girl's face. Later that day, the coach pulled Alyssa aside. "You've got a gift," she said. "You make people believe in themselves." Alyssa smiled modestly. "I guess I just remember how it feels to be in their shoes." Years passed and Alyssa continued to grow. She balanced her studies, cheer, and part-time work mentoring younger athletes. She even began speaking at local schools about perseverance and teamwork. Her message was always simple. You can't control what others say, but you can control how you respond. Back home, her father kept a small collection of her newspaper clippings and photos in a box. Every time she achieved something new, he'd quietly add to it. He didn't talk much about it, but anyone who knew him could tell how proud he was. One winter break, Alyssa returned home for the holidays. The first night back, she and her father sat by the fireplace talking late into the night. "You've done everything I hoped you would," he said softly. "You've built your life with your own strength." She looked at him and smiled. "You gave me the map," she said. "I just had to follow it," he chuckled. "You made your own map." A few weeks later, her old high school invited her to speak at their annual assembly. Standing in the same gym where her journey had begun, she looked out at rows of students, some cheering, some shy, all listening. She told them her story, not to impress them, but to remind them that they could overcome anything. "When people try to bring you down," she said, "it's often because they see something strong in you that they don't understand. Don't let their doubt become your truth. Believe in who you are. And remember, your story isn't over just because it's hard. That's usually where it begins." When she finished, the gym erupted in applause. Her father watched from the side, his expression proud and peaceful. That night, as they drove home, he said, "You've come full circle." Alyssa nodded. "Yeah, but I think it's just the beginning of something new." She looked out the window at the stars, thinking about how far she had come, from the shy new girl who was afraid to speak up to the confident young woman standing in front of hundreds, sharing her truth. Her father smiled. "You're right," he said. "The best stories never really end. They just keep growing." And as the car rolled down the quiet road toward home, Alyssa felt it too, that her story was still unfolding, still reaching new places. She had learned that strength wasn't about fighting back. It was about standing firm with kindness, believing in yourself when others didn't, and never letting fear define you. The bullies who once mocked her were just a small chapter in a much bigger book, a story about courage, grace, and love. And as the years went on, Alyssa carried that story everywhere she went, living proof that sometimes the quietest people can make the loudest impact, and that true power doesn't come from being feared, it comes from being fearless.